Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Little Red Riding Hood who lived in a small house at the edge of a large forest. She was named so because one day her grandmother gave her a beautiful red velvet hat. Because it looked so good on her, the little girl never wanted to wear anything else, so much so that they ended up calling her that, Little Red Riding Hood. One day her mother asked her to bring her grandmother 2 baskets full of fruits and vegetables, one for each meal. "How many times will Grandma be able to eat thanks to our baskets?" he asked her. Little Red Riding Hood was familiar with the 2 times table. The calculation was easy. If each basket served for a meal, he simply had to do 2 times 1. "Grandma will be able to eat twice," she laughed. As she was getting ready to go out, Little Red Riding Hood saw on the kitchen table a delicious, freshly baked cake. She knew that Grandma loved sweets and wanted to add 2 slices per basket. But how many slices did she need? 2 slices for 2 baskets. 2 by 2, 4. "Good girl," said Mom. "Now go and be sure not to go through the woods. You might meet the big bad wolf." "All right, Mommy," Little Red Riding Hood replied, and left the house with the 2 baskets full of food. It was quite a long way to go. To get to Grandma's house, he would have to travel 3 kilometers. 3 kilometers to go, and 3 kilometers to return. How far would she have had to go? Even then it was helpful for her to know the 2 times table. 2 times 3 is 6, 6 kilometers. She would have to walk 6 kilometers. Little Red Riding Hood thought it would take too long and decided to go through the woods, even though her mother had forbidden her to do so. At one point while walking through the trees, she met the wolf. He did not look bad, however, and so Little Red Riding Hood decided to approach him. The wolf was staring at 2 bushes full of berries. "I can't count how many berries there are in total," he said bitterly. "Look," Little Red Riding Hood pointed out to him. "On each bush there are 4 berries. The bushes are 2, so there are 8 berries." "Good," said the wolf, grabbing the berries. After that he changed his expression and asked her, "Where are you going, Nicely?" Little Red Riding Hood replied. "At Grandma's house I have to take her 2 baskets full of fruits and vegetables that I have in my backpack." "And where does your grandmother live?" Wolf asked, growing more and more interested. "On the other side of the woods," Little Red Riding Hood replied. "The road is long, I have to go," he then said. And she started hopping toward Grandma's house without realizing that the wolf was staring at her, licking his whiskers. When Little Red Riding Hood arrived at Grandma's house, she stopped to admire the roses on the windowsill. Grandma had arranged 2 vases with 5 roses each. "How many roses were there in total? 2 times 5 is 10. 10 roses, how beautiful they were." Little Red Riding Hood entered the house and approached Grandma, who strangely enough was still in bed. "How are you, Grandmother?" he asked her. "Oh, my head has been hurting for 2 weeks, Grandma complained in a rather strange voice. Little Red Riding Hood calculated how many days corresponded to 2 weeks. 7 times 2, 14. Grandma had had a headache for 14 days. Jeepers. At that point, Little Red Riding Hood approached the bed. And he noticed that Grandma looked different than usual. "What big eyes you have," she said. Grandmother replied, "To look at you better." "What big ears you have," he added. "To listen to you better. What a big nose you have. To smell you better. And what a big mouth you have." At that point, Grandma broke free from her disguise and in her wolf voice shouted in a threatening tone, "To eat you better." It was at that point that Little Red Riding Hood realized that the one in the bed was not her grandmother, but the big bad wolf. She was not in time to escape, however, because the wolf opened its mouth wide and ate her whole. Once inside the wolf's belly, Little Red Riding Hood screamed 8 times with all the breath she had, and with each of her screams the wolf added another. 2 times 8 is 16. Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf cried out 16 times. Just then a young runner was passing by. Hearing those 16 screams coming from his grandmother's house, the boy became suspicious and decided to go check it out. After all, he had had enough practice for that morning. He had run 9 kilometers out and 9 kilometers back. In all, he had run 18 kilometers. 2 times 9 is 18. The runner immediately understood what had happened. Quick action had to be taken. But what could he do? He had an idea. he offered the wolf a cake full of sleeping pills. The wolf fell into the trap, and after tasting some fell asleep. At that point the young runner, who was also a good doctor, opened the wolf's belly and let out Little Red Riding Hood and Grandma. Yay! Fortunately they were both fine. "Thank you, runner," said Little Red Riding Hood. "You saved our lives." The runner smiled and said they had to stop the wolf from doing any more harm. Then Little Red Riding Hood and the runner went out into the garden and collected 10 stones each. 10 times 2 is 20. They would stick them all in the wolf's belly, and from that day with a belly full of stones. He could have eaten only the grass of the forest. What Little Red Riding Hood understood from that misadventure was that if she had not come through the woods, disobeying her mother, that mess would not have happened, and her grandmother would not have ended up, as she did, in the belly of the big bad wolf. From that day, Little Red Riding Hood learned to always listen to the good advice of those who loved her. And among the good advice was to learn the 2 times table properly. What about you? Did you learn it? If you liked this story, remember to like and especially subscribe to our channel.